Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. My producer found the audio I was talking about. I actually want to play this for you. This is a woman. She's a school teacher who was pulled over by a Latino police officer in California, and you can hear what happens when critical theory gets into your brain. It's in the brain of the woman, not the police officer.
Do you have that
you
picture?
scared me and made me think you were going to murder me.
Okay, well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Well, that's not just a feeling. You're a murderer.
Okay. Can you zoom in on that for me,
Sure.
dear? Thank you.
And I'm perfectly legal, and I'm a teacher. So there.
Congratulations.
Murderer. You're a murderer.
What's your last name? I can't see that there.
Well,
If
here you
stop,
go,
stop
murderer.
shaking. Zoom in on that for
No,
me,
because
ma'am.
you're scaring me.
Oh,
You're threatening to kill me and my son. Can you give me
okay.
the
Well,
iPad,
I'll
please?
tell you what. You keep smiling. You're on camera.
You're trying to threaten to kill me.
I
I'm not
didn't say that.
smiling. You're the one who's
Hold that still. I can't see that. Is this your car?
Yes, it is. You're trying to say I stole my own car because you're jealous?
Yeah,
Is that what
I don't
that's
think
about?
so. You wait for me right here, okay?
You're jealous?
Citation. All you need to do is your signature. He's only citing you for using your cell phone while you're driving. That's it.
There you go, ma'am. Sign inside the red
being
box right
for
there.
him being a Mexican racist. What is that name?
It's on the
Gasso.
citation, ma'am.
Here you go, Mexican racist. You're always going to be a Mexican. You'll never be white. You know that, right? You'll never be white, which is what you really want to be.
There you
want
go,
to be
dear.
white.
Have a good day.
You want to be white.
Mexican racist. He was a murderer. If you didn't hear all of that, murderer wanted to kill her and her family. Why? Because he was a police officer, which is a product of white supremacy, and he's trying to fit into white supremacy society by being one. That's a teacher, a public school teacher. God help us that that person is out there teaching kids. This is what critical theory does to people's brains. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. Delighted to have you. If you're on the CMG stations in Dayton, Tulsa, Orlando, and Jacksonville, Mark K will be back tomorrow. Thanks for putting up with me today. Delighted to have you with me. You can call in. You're more than welcome to call in. 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Also, one housekeeping note, those of you who are regular listeners know I like to cook. It's a great distraction from the news headlines of the day. One of those things that I like to cook is white barbecue chicken. My wife loves it. And for those of you who don't know, it is a mayonnaise-based barbecue sauce from northern Alabama, and I know for some of you that'll sound gross. You ought to try it. A lot of these recipes have horseradish in them, and my wife can't eat horseradish. So I found one years ago in Southern Living magazine that didn't have horseradish, but one of the key ingredients was the Lee and Perrins white Worcestershire sauce or their chicken marinade, which they don't make anymore. And I finally had to call Lee and Perrins and get the ingredients. They were very kind enough to give me the basics so that I could recreate the white barbecue sauce that my wife likes. And I'm sending that recipe out at 3 o'clock today. If you would like the recipe, text the word recipe to 33777 and you'll get a link. Click the link, put your email address in. I'm not going to sell it. You're not going to get spam. You're not going to get ads. You're just going to get weekly recipes from me. And at 3 p.m. today, the white barbecue chicken recipe. So text recipe to 33777, click the link, put in your email address, and you can get it wherever you are nationwide. Now, we got to talk about Dr. Fauci. I'm a little frustrated with everybody here. I think it's probably time for Dr. Fauci to leave. But I also think that everyone is rushing to confirm their "see, I told you so's" and their priors. For example, in one of the emails, Dr. Fauci notes that masks are not the solution. They're imperfect. And people on the right who were masked up are saying, aha, it's proof they never worked all along. When you dig into the paper trail and you dig into the data, as I've said for over a year, and people still get mad at me for saying it, even though the latest research out, I was at University of Chicago, University of Tennessee, somewhere on masks don't really work. It's on people who aren't infected. And as I have said for a year, if you're uninfected and you wear a mask and someone is infected and they don't wear a mask, you're probably going to get COVID. But if the infected person wears a mask, it does mitigate to a degree. But as Fauci notes in the email, it's not perfect. It's a very imperfect solution. Well, people on the right say, prove he knew all along they don't work. No, it's an imperfect solution. It's a solution, but it's an imperfect solution. It's like those stupid car manufacturers who now decide that when you're stopped at a stoplight, your car engine turns off. And then it revs back up again later. It's an imperfect solution for fuel efficiency. No, it's not an imperfect solution at all. It's crap. That's what that is. I hate that. Oh, okay. Well, we'll move on from that. Dr. Fauci has pushed back all along on the lab theory stuff, but at the same time has not completely discredited it. My buddy Leon Wolf at The Blaze last year pointed out that everyone was saying Dr. Fauci disputed, dismissed, or debunked the lab leak theory, but in fact, if you listen to what Fauci said, he said he did not see evidence of it, but he was not willing to dismiss it. And in fact, we see in the emails all along, Dr. Fauci was not dismissing the lab leak theory. He did tend to dismiss the man-made theory, for which there is some evidence out we'll get into, but he wasn't completely dismissing it. Now, what the left is doing is they're saying, everything we said about Dr. Fauci was right. What the right is doing is say, everything we said about Dr. Fauci is right. What I'm going to do, someone who's of the right, but now these days often a contrarian for reasons of everybody else has lost their damn mind, is that, yes, Dr. Fauci hurt himself. Ben Shapiro probably had the greatest statement on this. Shapiro tweeted that Dr. Fauci is very much like John Roberts on the Supreme Court. Fauci to the NIH, as Roberts says to the Supreme Court, protect the institution, and in so doing, cause the trust and faith in the institution to be undermined. And that's exactly what Fauci's done. Dr. Fauci, as the head of what is the National Institute for Allergies and Infectious Disease, or whatever, I forget, NIAID or whatever, Dr. Fauci decided as an institutionalist to do everything to elevate his institution, and in so doing has undermined the credibility of his institution, and it is time for Dr. Fauci to retire. We now know from the emails that, yes, internally there was concern about the lab leak, even as Fauci on television was being more dismissive of it than he should have been, because he did not want to sow doubts. We do know that Dr. Fauci was intrigued by gain-of-function issues, even as he played down that. We do know that Dr. Fauci publicly downplayed a lot of things taken more seriously internally. If you follow the paper trail and read the emails, it appears that his concern was both about trust in the institution and public panic. Dr. Fauci's behavior gets to a larger point. There are a lot of people in this country, in organizations, in institutions, and in the government, who believe you need to depend on their organization and institution. And in so doing, they also believe that they know what's in your best interest. And they choose both to provide you information and to withhold from you information to guide you to certain conclusions because they don't think you can handle the truth. They are very much like Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Therefore, they themselves will determine what you should and should not know. To further Ben Shapiro's point, look at John Roberts on the Supreme Court. John Roberts on the Supreme Court believes that the United States Supreme Court should stay out of politics and should not be viewed as a political institution. Consequently, John Roberts has made decisions for the Supreme Court that make the Supreme Court look even more political by trying to keep it out of politics. Dr. Fauci, to protect his institution and the competence of his institution, has shielded from the public information that could be taken and repackaged to put his institution in the worst possible light. And now we have all of the emails to show as much. And Dr. Fauci's rationale and behavior, if you read all of the emails, seems to be that it's a complex topic and the public can't make up their mind. So let's give them the information necessary for them to make up their mind by having them make up their mind in his direction. It's always a little more complicated. I hate to bring up the mask issue because it has become an ideological, dogmatic issue. People on the left are convinced that they work. People on the right are convinced they don't work. And I'm caught in the middle of they work for the infected and for no one else. And they only work completely, if at all, if everybody wears them. And even then, they're not effective completely, but they're more effective than not if every single person wears them everywhere, which no one is doing. So therefore, they're not really effective. But if the infected people wore them, they would be better than if the uninfected people wore them and the uninfected or the infected did not. There's no reason for me to die on this hill. A lot of people want to die on the hill of masks. But if you recall, in March and April, the government was telling everyone, don't worry about them. You don't need to use them. It's not going to work. And then in May and June, suddenly everybody needs to wear a mask. And we now know that the reason they were telling us this is because they were afraid of a run on masks and they needed the healthcare workers to have them first. And so they just simply told them it wasn't going to do you any good. And then they told you that they were going to do lots of good if you wore a mask. But that too wasn't true because masks work to the extent the infected wear them. But if the uninfected people are wearing them and the infected people are not, it doesn't do the mask wearers any good. It's all about the infected person. But they muddied that message as well. Every message they've had, they've wound up muddying it as more information has come out. And this is part of the problem we've been dealing with for a year. If the lab leak is true, COVID began in November of 2019. It began spreading in Wuhan, China in December and may have come to the United States in late December. It may have been spreading here before we acknowledge now. There are a number of people who had flu-like illnesses who died. And if we look back and we went back and could test those people for COVID, we probably would find they had it. But we really didn't know about COVID before November of 2019. Really, we didn't know about COVID before mid-January of 2020. And in March and April and May and June and July and August and September and October of 2020, the data was still changing. And instead of walking with the public through the information and as it changed and as the virus mutated and as it spread and as we learned more, not from China but from the Western world, instead of walking us through the changes and every time coming out and saying it changed, the position of government health employees, not the Trump administration per se, but the bureaucratic institutionalists like Dr. Fauci, was to try to package narratives. They didn't want to come out and say, well, what we thought last month is different this month. They didn't have the humility to be able to admit they got it wrong or the data changed. They tried to reconcile everything into some level of genius they did not possess. And if you read the emails from Dr. Fauci, that's ultimately what you will see, is a group of people who were experiencing a new virus that had turned into a global pandemic, were scrambling at all hours of the day and night to try to figure out what was going on and what the data was and what would work and what wouldn't. And as things changed, they couldn't bring themselves publicly to acknowledge they either got it wrong or the facts changed. They tried to weave everything together into a comparent whole so that you maintained your trust in institutions that clearly do not deserve the trust because those institutions themselves did not trust you. It's time for Dr. Fauci to retire. That's where we are. It's time for him to retire. And it's time for the United States media to admit that they got a whole lot of stuff wrong and stop blaming Donald Trump for them getting it wrong. Just admit they got it wrong too.
Want to be on the show? Call Eric now at 877